What if the life most believers are chasing isn't the life Jesus actually called us to live? Think about that for a moment. We live in an era where faith is often packaged as a life enhancement tool. We are told that coming to God guarantees an easier path, an abundance of social favor, a quick track to realizing our wildest personal ambitions. We have built an entire culture around the idea that following Jesus is simply about adding Him to the life we already want to live. But when you open the Gospels and actually read the red letters, a very different picture emerges. Jesus didn't describe a wide, comfortable, socially accepted path. He didn't offer a blueprint for building an empire of personal comfort. He described something narrow, something hidden, and something incredibly costly. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. The narrow life is not just about avoiding sin. That is the baseline, but it is not the totality of the call. The narrow life is about surrendering control. It is about walking a path where your decisions are no longer shaped by culture, by passing trends, or even by your own personal ambition, but by a radical obedience to God, even when it costs you everything. Jesus said few would find it. He didn't say that because it's impossible to find. He didn't hide the map. He said few would find it because it requires something most people are fundamentally unwilling to give up: their autonomy, their right to themselves. Let's compare the two paths for a moment. Let's start with the wide life. The wide life is, above all things, easy. It is the path of least resistance. It allows you to blend in seamlessly with the culture around you. It's a life that permits compromise, whispering that surely God doesn't expect you to be that radical. It adjusts absolute truth to fit personal comfort. On the wide path, you can still say you believe. You can still attend church every Sunday. You can post scripture verses, lead a small group, and look incredibly spiritual to everyone on the outside. But deep inside, behind closed doors, nothing has truly died. The ego is still intact. The flesh is still driving the car. You are still the CEO of your own life, just keeping God on as a spiritual consultant for when things go wrong. But the narrow life. The narrow life confronts you. It does not let you hide behind religious activity. It strips away pride layer by layer. It challenges your deepest desires and asks, do you want this because I planted it in you, or because the world told you it would make you important? The narrow path calls you out of systems that reward popularity over purity. It demands that you follow even when you absolutely do not understand the destination. It requires you to look at a cultural standard of success, money, fame, status, climbing the ladder, and willingly walk the other way if God says no. And this is exactly where the tension begins for so many of us, because there is a vast multitude of believers who genuinely think they are walking with God, but their minds, their habits, and their reactions are still deeply connected to the world's way of thinking. They pursue success, validation, and security the exact same way everyone else does, hustling, striving, manipulating, worrying, just with a spiritual label attached to it. They want the rewards of the narrow path while walking firmly on the wide one. But the narrow life separates you. I don't mean it separates you physically. We aren't called to run away and live in caves. We are called to be salt and light in the world. But it separates you spiritually from the system that opposes God. When you step onto the narrow path, your values undergo a seismic shift. Your priorities completely change. What once attracted you, the gossip, the endless pursuit of wealth, the need to be the smartest person in the room, now grieves you. The entertainment you used to consume without a second thought suddenly feels heavy. The ambitions you used to stay up late, chasing, suddenly feel hollow compared to the weight of God's presence. Let me tell you a story. There was a believer who was doing everything as right, and they began to pray a very dangerous, very beautiful prayer. They prayed for purpose. They prayed for clarity. They begged for a deeper intimacy with God. "O Lord, use me. Show me your will." And God answered, but he did not answer with the kind of blessings they expected. Instead of opening a massive door of opportunity, God started closing doors. Relationships that once felt so secure suddenly shifted and dissolved. The financial comfort they relied on was removed. Their reputation took a hit. Everything they had built their identity upon was suddenly shaking. At first, they thought something was terribly wrong. They thought, I must have sinned. The enemy must be attacking me. God, why have you abandoned me? But over time, in the quiet, in the breaking, they realized something powerful. God wasn't punishing them. He was answering their prayer. He was leading them onto the narrow path. He had to remove the scaffolding of the wide road so they could learn to walk the narrow one. It's a path where dependence replaces independence, where obedience replaces convenience, where sitting in silence with God becomes infinitely more valuable than receiving applause and noise from the world. And here's the part most leaders won't tell you. The part you don't realize until you're deep into the journey. The narrow life feels incredibly lonely at first. It is lonely because fewer people understand it. Fewer people walk it. Fewer people choose it. Your friends might look at your boundaries and call you rigid. They might look at your sacrifices and call you foolish. But listen to me, that loneliness is holy. Because in that quiet, stripped-away place, God's presence becomes undeniable. That is the place where your faith stops being a Sunday theory and becomes a Tuesday morning reality. So here is the truth you need to face today. Here is the intersection you are standing at right now. You cannot walk both paths at the same time. You cannot have one foot in the kingdom and one foot in the culture. You cannot live fully for God while remaining fully rooted in the world's system. At some point, a decision has to be made. Will you choose comfort? Or will you choose your calling? Will you choose the acceptance of the crowd? Or the obedience of the cross? Will you choose the wide, crowded road or the quiet, narrow life? Because in the end, I need you to know this, the narrow life is not about restriction. The enemy wants you to think it's about losing out. It's not. It is about transformation. It is the only place where your old self finally dies. And your true eternal identity in God begins to breathe. It is where you finally figure out what you were created for. And if even a small part of you feels stirred right now, if your heart is beating a little faster, if you feel a weight in your chest, that's not an accident. That's not just emotion. That's a call. It is a call to step out, a call to surrender the pen and let him write the story, a call to walk a path few choose, but the only path that actually leads to life. So don't ignore it. Don't push this feeling away and go back to scrolling. Start today. Choose obedience in the small unseen things. Separate yourself from the habits and environments that pull you away from God. Seek Him not just in momentary crises, but in your entire way of living. Let Him dictate your finances, your relationships, your time, because the narrow life isn't found by accident. Nobody drifts into holiness. It is chosen, and it must be chosen daily. But I promise you this, those who find the courage to walk it will never ever be the same.